I'd like to take a moment and answer an issue that comes up, every now and then, particularly in the evangelical community that is anticipating the return of Christ, particularly the imminent return. These would be characteristically the premillennial, pre-trib crowd, of which I count myself roughly a member of theologically. I'm not a pre-trib guy, so that's a distinction. But in this particular group, not only is there a strong preaching about the details about the second coming of Christ and what may be being fulfilled now, and I think it's an honorable position, and it might be the case that that's true. But then amongst those is a smaller group that seem to be in the habit of giving dates and saying when they think Jesus is going to return and that kind of thing. And this has a checkered past, obviously, because people in the past who have done that have come up with egg on their face. Obviously, Jesus hasn't returned yet, and those dates are long past, and so they've had to make adjustments. And some are wondering, though, and this happens every time someone makes this prediction that at some future date, in the near future, next year, in May or whatever, Jesus is going to return. We've recalculated our prophetic clocks, as it were, and now we think we got it right. There are a lot of people who actually get a little concerned about that, even though they have reason to be wary. They still are wondering, well, maybe they're right this time, and what if it happens that way, and etc. So let me give two thoughts that might be helpful in this regard. Here's the first thought. It is common to dismiss these speculations based on something Jesus said in Matthew 24. And, well, the way it's cited is, no one can ever know when he's going to return. No one knows the day or the hour. This is just for the Father. Not the angels in heaven, not even the Son know this, Jesus said in Matthew 24. And so that's the end of it. Now that's taken to mean that this date will always be a mystery to everyone until the event itself happens, except of course to the Father who brings this about. Now I don't think that's the right way to take that verse, partly because it's a misquotation of the verse, and also because of another problem. I would ask the question of people who advance that verse against people setting dates, which I'm not in favor of that. I'm just simply saying that this is one way that it's wrong to combat that. My question would be, do you think that now Jesus himself, in his resurrected body, seated at the right hand of the Father, do you think Jesus himself knows the day and the hour of his return? I have never had anyone of whom I've asked that question say to me that, no, Jesus doesn't know that now. Well, if Jesus knows the date now, then it's clear then that verse no longer applies, because Jesus said in Matthew 24, and here I'm quoting now accurately, no one knows the day or hour, not the angels in heaven, not even the Son, but the Father alone. If now the Son knows, then that verse is no longer operational. It still certainly could be even the angels know. And if people have been using that verse to say you can't set dates, that's the wrong date to use. I'm sorry, the wrong verse to use. And keep in mind what Jesus said. He was asked by his disciples, what will be the, when will these things be, the things that Jesus has just described at the beginning of the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24, and that is the destruction of the temple. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So arguably there's three different parts to their question. And what Jesus answers, at least with regards to a part of the material, is he says, no one knows. Notice that is present tense. So Jesus says no one knows. That is, at that moment, no one knows but the Father. After that moment, that may be different. That is, it certainly seems different for Jesus. He does know, I think probably. And it might be the case that someone 2,000 years later might be able to know. So I don't think the Matthew 24 passage is operative here. I don't think it's the one that you use to dismiss this stuff. By the way, most people who are setting dates are setting a date for a pre-trib rapture, which I don't believe in anyway. So I'm not inclined to be tempted to try to set the date for a pre-trib rapture. I think the resurrection happens at the return of Christ. There's only one return of Christ, and that resurrection of the living, of the dead, and the living who go from living to immortality, mortal immortality. That, in a sense, resurrection of living people, the so-called rapture, happens at that time. It's another issue. But let me speak specifically to this. Do I get worried that somebody might be right, that Jesus is coming next May? And my response is absolutely not. I pay no attention to it whatsoever. I don't disregard it because I think they're all false. I don't know if they're false or not. I don't even know if I'd have any way of knowing it, to be honest with you. I tend to take them with a huge grain of salt because so many people have tried this in the past and have obviously been unsuccessful. But the biggest reason why I don't worry about it is because it doesn't change anything. I've got lots of work to do. I've got my own marching orders. If Jesus doesn't come in my lifetime, fine. That's up to God. I know what I have to do, my work. Fulfill my responsibilities as a follower of Christ with his kingdom, regardless of whether I make a living on it or not. That's not my point. I'm still going to be a faithful follower of Christ in any circumstances that he gives. By his grace, by the way, I'm not speaking presumptuously here. This is my goal. And if he comes back like today at 4 p.m., fine. I'm right in the middle of the battle, right in the middle of the thick of it. He says, okay, that's it. It's over with. Okay, I'm with you. And if it turns out to be a pre-trib rapture, I don't have any beef against that. I just don't think it's sound theologically. I don't think it's what the Bible teaches. But if that's the way it turns out, why would I want it any different? The sooner the better, right? So I think that there's good reason just to ignore these kind of prognostications about the second coming of Christ. They've been wrong lots in the past. I don't think they're disqualified by Matthew 24, but I don't see why anybody should have any particular insight in it. I think we got to at least go through the tribulation first, and then once you're in the tribulation, then you may be able to do some calculations. But it's clear we're not in the tribulation. And so therefore, I'm not interested in setting any dates. My goal is just to keep it on. I got my marching orders, so do you. Let's be faithful to Christ. Let's do what we should be doing, living a godly life in the midst of an ungodly world and taking our gifts and capabilities we have and using them fruitfully in the kingdom of God, and using the opportunities that we are given with those who don't share our views as ambassadors for Christ, extending the kingdom in places it isn't yet already, but we can make a difference. And that's what I worry about. I don't worry about the other things. That'll take care of themselves. When Jesus comes back, that's his business. I'll let him worry about it.